trying to figure it out by yourself based on your particular paradigm, because it's usually the same thing just in a different form.
We're here with us, we have from St. Lucia, Johnny Libon, and he will tell us a little bit about today's session. So hi.
So today's session, well, first of all, I'd like to say it's really a pleasure being in Trinidad and Tobago, the Twin Island state. I think as a youth leader, it's very important to be part of some of those events and forums where we could be able to dialogue. Today's event has really been, I think it's really started off on a great footing. We've been able to discuss the future of the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, and as young people, we really want CRIC to be as impactful as possible. So we've discussed areas for improvement of CRIC's mandate, and we're also looking at areas by which youth organizations and youth leaders could begin to form a greater synergy as we form a strategy towards improving the way that young people are treated and the way young people are viewed across the region. So I'm really looking forward to the next 2 days of this conference, and I hope that we're able to come out with a final outcome statement which could really resonate across the region.
Okay, so from today's event, what was the most outstanding part of the forum for you today? And what do you think that youths need to buck up on for the future, and what steps do we need to work on together as youths in the Caribbean to bring everything to the forefront?
Right, so fundamentally I think the session where we went into some of the smaller groups to discuss how could CRIC become a lot more relevant to the average young person across the region was really an enjoyable one for me. Reason being, back home, I think being connected on the community level, you get the idea that a lot of young people want to become involved, but they're not aware as to some of the avenues to which they could become a lot more involved. So what I'm saying is that as individuals working in communities, it's important that we link the youth within our community to some of these regional organizations which could be able to provide opportunities. So I think furthermore, for me, going into that session, I was able to get sort of a perspective as to how other young people across the region view the organization, and perhaps back home I could begin to promote the CRIC as really an organization which works towards the benefit of youth at the grassroots level. And as NYCs across the region, I think we could do a lot more in terms of our own strategy to ensure that CRIC is part of our strategy and our strategy fits into CRIC's strategy as well.
Alright, last but not least, what advice do you have to give to the youth who want to get involved but are afraid to get involved because they're not a part of a community group or they're not part of a youth council or anything like that?
Great question. A lot of the times I hear very much what you just mentioned, and I think as a young person it's important for you to begin to think about what you're good at. And today we looked at positive youth development. And when we look at positive youth development, we want to really focus on the strengths as opposed to the weaknesses. And I think as a young person, it's important for you to look at where are you strong in, what are some of the areas that you're passionate about, and using your passion to find creative ways. Sometimes we look at things very rigid, but I think as a young person, there are areas that you could begin to show how you could be able to generate impact in your own community, where it might be through a club, it might be by creating your own little movement, it might be just by linking up with a few friends in your community and starting something really small. And I think the very small things that we do in the community really feed into a larger picture whereby we're all young people looking to create change and be change makers in our society.
So I'm an entrepreneur, and I believe in create, brand, and market. And I believe governments respond to that because most of us have Chinese developmental agencies in most of our countries like Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago, where the Chinese actually sell the government policies, sell the government developmental programs.
That youth governance as an issue or as a scenario is that it must be accountable, there must be transparency, credibility, and more importantly, it must mean that youth organizations as well as NYCs must manage the resources of the country effectively.
Summit, the sixth one in Trinidad. Today we have with us Anel from Dominica, and she will tell us a little bit about this evening session on innovation and entrepreneurship.
Hi, good day. My name is Annalise Carcom, from Ambassador for Dominica and also Project Officer for the National Youth Council. And I think this afternoon session on innovation and entrepreneurship is one of the most interesting sessions throughout the Caribbean Youth Summit. I think it's timely, even as we have young people emerging as leaders and as we have a lot of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship happening now around the Caribbean. I think it was also good so that young people could use it as a marketing strategy and to also learn from others what are some of the do's and don'ts and pros and cons of being an entrepreneur. And so I'm very happy to have been part of that session.
Okay, Anna, what will you take back to Dominica from this session?
From this session, I think one of the key messages I would take back is where we had a car and using that example, different elements of a car, and relating it to business, where we had to prioritize and figure out which ones and which parts of the car were the most important in terms of business. And so I am definitely going to use that example as a mentor for entrepreneurs in Dominica to get feedback from them and to give them the feedback from, because I chose the speed bump as one of the one of the most important parts of being an entrepreneur on that journey. Because sometimes we need a step back and we need speed bumps in life to take us, and so to recognize that we should not take some things for granted.
Okay, thank you very much, and I hope to see you on the rest of this video.